Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night, good everything. So, this session, I wanted to talk to you all just very candidly about whether or not we are ready. A lot of times we ask for things that we are not ready for. And let me start with myself. I'm jumping right into this. Um, there was a window of time that I knew for a fact I was not ready for any relationship. Did I want one? Yes. Was I ready? No. And I knew it. And during that window of time, it was understood by myself and whoever I was hanging out with that this really can't go anywhere because I have stuff that I'm trying to finish doing. I have things that I'm trying to work through. I had some injuries that I wanted to heal, needed God to heal. I wanted to kind of get a hold of my career, what I was trying to do with my life, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But I had a lot of unknowns about myself, and I had a lot of things that I felt like had I invited somebody else into my situation, it would have been so unfair to that person. And sometimes I look at different people and or I listen to them and I question whether or not they really are ready for what they're asking for. We can ask for, a relationship, a job, a career. We can ask for a lot of things and we can sincerely want them. But are you truly ready? Are you doing things that show that you can hold up that very thing that you're asking for? Because some people want to get married, you all. Some people want to get married. Let's be honest. If you will be who you are, will that be fair to that other person? Sometimes our own desires, our own selfish desires, let me just go ahead and call this what it is. We're so busy talking about what we want. I want to get married. I want my husband. I want my kids. I want this. I want that. I want the house and the white picket fence. But are you ready for it? You want a husband and you don't want to cook. You don't want to clean. You don't want to compromise. You don't want to have respectful disagreements with people. You want a wife. You don't want to work. You don't want to compromise. You don't want to share. You don't want to give. You want kids. You don't want to work. You don't want to share. You don't want anybody waking you up at night. You don't want to do anything past yourself. Are you ready? And I don't mean, for those who, for a moment, somebody can say something and then you hurry up and I'm going to clean my house today. I'm going to cook a meal today. I'm going to fill out this application today. But relationships, a marriage will take consistency. You're not going to want your husband. I can assure you, I'm not going to want my husband to be starting over working every week. I don't want him to be a permanent temp worker. You get a new job every week. We have to see some stability. You have to see stability in their actions. You have to see consistency in their actions and what they do. So we can want things that we are completely not ready for. And let me take you to the Word of God to back me up. And this is a very familiar text, and I've already I think I've already done a video on this text, but for a different reason. And it's the story of the prodigal son. It's called the parable of the lost son. It's in Luke 15, and I'm going to read all of it, starting with chapter 11. It says, a certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of good that falls to me. So give me my inheritance now. So he divided to them his livelihood. So the father did what he asked him to do. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. So he went to his dad and says, Dad, hey, can you give me my inheritance now? And the dad honored his request, and he gave him his inheritance. But it tells us he wasted his inheritance. Why? Because he wasn't ready. It was something that was his, but he did not have the maturity, the self-control, the discipline. He did not have what it took to withhold his stuff. So yes, the inheritance was his. It was his stuff. It's not like he stole it. And even for us, if you get that thing that God has promised you before you actually are mature enough to withhold it, you're going to end up in the same situation as the prodigal son. So let's see what he does. It says in verse 14, but when he had spent everything, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. So he had everything he needed during a time that he didn't really need it. But then when he actually needed it, he had blown it. So then he went, and out of desperation, he joined himself to a citizen of that country. And he sent him into his fields to feed swine. So he left his father's mansion, having access to everything that he needed, because he wanted to be out on his own, and he wanted his stuff right then. He blew it. He blew his stuff. And then he ended up having to get some stranger to hire him. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, we got to wake up. You need to wake up. We are going to have to wake up before we actually get into these relationships, before you actually get that job that you're praying for, before you actually get that promotion. You need to come to yourself before that happens. How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And then it tells us that, he gets up one day and he goes to his father. But while he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion that his son was coming back. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against you. And I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I'm no longer to be worthy to be called your son. But the father embraces him because he says, my son is home. The one that was dead now is alive. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. And I'll stop right there. And I thought about this. I said, okay, we have this young man who has what he needs. He's been given gifts from his father. So if God gave you that husband, if God gave you that wife, if God gave you that promotion, if God blesses you with those children, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? While you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with them, you should have had in mind what you were supposed to do with those kids before they got here. You should have had in mind what you were going to do with your wife before you got her. You should have had in mind what you were going to do with your husband before you got him. You don't invite people into unstable situations. Trust me, as someone who has been invited on more than one occasion into an unstable situation, it is painful and it is unfair and it is very selfish. So what we have to do is, as individuals, while we're single, we need to get control of our situation. Because you don't invite somebody into a storm. You don't invite somebody into chaos. You don't invite somebody into instability, into places that are not secured. You have got to get control of that situation. So with me, like my house, honestly, the way that I keep my home, I'm not even like this super neat freak, but the way that I keep my home consistently allows for someone else to come in and live. Now, I do have some bad habits because I told y'all I wake up at old dark 30 and will clean up or run on my treadmill or do something crazy. So I do have some habits that I am aware that if somebody else was in my home, I wouldn't be able to do that because it's unfair. Unless he waking up too, and then we can just run on the treadmill together, and that'd be cool. But I know those things about myself that I'm going to have to adjust. And so if we're praying for anything, and I'm mainly talking about relationships, a husband, a wife, or children, a family, if you're praying for these things, are you actually ready? Because nobody's going to come into your home and keep waiting on you to clean up. Nobody's going to keep opening up this refrigerator and there's no food in it. Nobody's going to keep listening to you talking about you working on getting a job. I'm working on you work. Brother, do you work? I'm working on it. Are you going to fix this? I'm working on it. And I'm not assigning roles to people. I'm not assigning roles. So, when I say a woman, you need to have your house clean. But man, you need to clean up behind yourselves too. It takes two. So I'm not necessarily saying that you need to assign a role. But if we're just honest about the situation, everybody knows that it's the woman that makes the home. Yes, the husband, you all do a really good job. Some of you, I don't know y'all. Some of y'all, provide financially and do what you're supposed to do in that regard. But a home is totally different. A home is that safe place, that place where someone can come in and recover and relax. Like right now, when I come in my house, I love coming home. My house is very comfortable. It's very cozy. It feels very safe for me. I'm not walking into my home in a chaotic environment because I don't want to invite somebody else into a chaotic environment. The chaos generally occurs outside. We can turn the news on at any point in time and see chaos. We can go to our jobs and see chaos. But that's not the atmosphere that you want to establish in your home, because otherwise you'll never have a place to go. Because even when you look at the prodigal son, what happened? When he left the safety and the security of his father's house, his father had everything he needed in place. It was structure. It was safety. It was security. It was provision. His father had everything he needed inside of their home already. But the prodigal son looked out and took his stuff and he walked into chaos. And when he walked into chaos with no discipline, no self-control, and as an immature young man, he became a very part of that chaotic environment and lost everything that he has. So we have to be honest with ourselves, because I know for a fact, I know some people who they're saying, well, I'm praying for my husband. I hope God sends me my mate. God, I pray every day for him to send me my husband. And I think to myself, but seriously, let's be honest. If he was to send him to you today, would you actually be ready for him? Or would you have to spend time trying to get ready on his watch, on his clock? Because let me tell you something I tell my students. I always tell my students, time doesn't change you. Your behaviors and your choices and your actions change you. So don't think that like when I tell my students, don't think you're going to turn 18 and be a different version of a different version of you. You will be the same version of yourself, just older. So time doesn't change things. When you have bad habits, time won't fix that. When you have no discipline, time won't fix that. If you know that you've never held a job down longer than a month, time won't fix that. Your behavior, your willingness to change is what will ultimately fix that. And we have got to learn how to play fair. We are so unfair and so selfish because we do things like invite people into situations that we don't even have control of. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to come in there and help you control your stuff? They're They're going to come in there and help you control your stuff. You're going to force this person to deal with, his life and your life. So he's got to figure out how he's going to make it himself, and you got to figure out, and now he has to come home and figure out what to do with you. Marriage and relationships are for grown people, mature people, and grown is not an age. Maturity is not an age. I know a lot of people who are much older than me who are very much immature. So it's not an age. It shows in the decisions that we make. It shows in our behaviors. It shows in how we handle things. It shows in our willingness to say, you know what, as I am now, I can't hand myself now to somebody else. When you have just blatant, when you have blatant habits that would just make somebody else's world uncomfortable. I'll talk about myself, you all. I don't do the hoarding thing. If you are a hoarder, nobody else needs to be in your house but you. You can live like that if you choose to. But it's not fair for you to expect somebody else to come into that home. If you don't like to work and you go home and your lights are always off because you don't work and you don't want to work, that's cool. You do need to be by yourself because somebody may come in and want to hit that light switch and something happens. God said, let there be light. And it was light. So make sure that before you do anything else, and this is something that I've done, you all, because I told you at the beginning, there was a one little time I didn't want to be in a relationship because I had way too much stuff going on. I'm trying to finish school. I'm trying to let the Lord heal those parts of myself that if I handed them to somebody else, that it will cause them pain or cause them grief or cause them heartache. It is not my right to make somebody else's life harder than it is. And just like I tell people, I don't think it's your right to make my life harder than it is, because one verse that I stand by and I absolutely love is in Ecclesiastes. It says 2 is better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. So the only time that doesn't happen is when you have one person attached to nothing. And I'm not calling the person nothing, but I'm saying from that other person, that person's contribution to that relationship isn't much. So don't be that person. Don't ask for something that you are unwilling to do right by. It's like the people who want a new car, but you don't want to go get the oil change. You want a new house, but you don't want to clean up the house. You're dealing with people, and it's unfair to that other person, because I told you all, I've been injured more than one time because I had somebody who I felt like they wanted me, but they were not ready. And when you have somebody on the receiving end of that, is hurtful. So we got to play fair. Are you ready? And if not, instead of asking God, send me my husband, send me my wife, send me my Boaz, send me my Ruth. Everybody has all this, send me my Esther. No, how about you say, Lord, get me ready for the one who you're going to send to me. Like, get me ready. Show me the things that I actually have control of. You have control of whether or not you clean your house up. You have control of, how you respond to situations. If your first response is for somebody says something to you and you pop off at the mouth and cuss them out, you really do have control of that. Because all you got to do is keep your mouth closed until you can think in a way that doesn't cause that type of emotional pain for somebody else. Because you ultimately can only reap what you sow. And if you keep sowing destructive words, and you keep sowing destructive habits and mannerisms and manners, if that is what you are sowing into that person, it will only be a matter of time that you get it back. So you need to sow based on what you want in return. So since I want someone who has structure, I make sure that my life has structure. I want somebody who's stable. Here, you gonna have to be stable in your mind, bro, because I'm not trying to be crazy with you or because of you. I want somebody who's emotionally and mentally stable. So I make sure that I am what I want. I take care of myself physically. God gave me one body, and I take care of that. I want somebody, you don't have to be manic, but take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, 10 years from now, when you're doing all this stuff that's poisoning you and causing health issues, I got to deal with that. So I sow according to what I want in return. I practice the behaviors and the actions of what I want in return. The reason why you can come in my home and my home is structured and neat is because I don't want somebody to come into my house and I give them permission to trash my house. Because I'll tell you this, if you have a lot of stuff going on in your home, you really did give that person permission to trash your house, because what you're saying is, this is how I live. This is how I live. So what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves a very important question about whether or not we are actually ready for the thing that we've been praying for. And if not, maybe you need to spend a little bit more time by yourself, consistently prepare yourself to receive someone else. You're going to receive a different person, not another you. You're not going to receive somebody who's just like you, chances are. So they might not be okay with some of the things that you're doing. And that's okay, because I live life as a single person. I'm single. Hello, I'm single. So I do single people things. But I understand that I won't be able to do some of this stuff when I'm married. So I've already prepared myself to make adjustments. And another thing I do is, for the most part, I am who I am. And for the most part, I've gotten control of who I'll be in my relationships. It's just those few things that I said I might have to make adjustments, because he might not want me waking him up at 2 o'clock in the morning running on that treadmill. And I can respect that. But you have to look around, look within, and say, okay, let me check my reaction. Let me check my response. Let me check how I handle things. Let me look around my home and see whether or not this home, I'm creating an environment that shows someone else that you're welcome here. Even in our cars, y'all, some people have cars, nobody else can ride in that car. Nobody can ride in that car. You have a box for passenger number 1, laundry baskets for passenger number 2. Then you have a garbage can in the back full of stuff for passengers numbers 3 and 4. So nobody else can get in your car but you. But you want a husband, and you want a family, and you want kids. Where they gonna ride? Where you gonna put them? Or you gonna keep having to dump stuff out every time somebody gets in that car? So this is something that you have to get control of if you actually want somebody to be in your space. Because nobody else is going to deal with that. No ma'am, no sir. Nobody else is going to deal with the fact that you get mad at your boss and quit. How old are we? I've never done that in my life. I mean, even my first job was at a fried chicken joint. I was 16. I worked that job because I wanted my check. So you don't get mad and say, well, he hurt my feelings. I don't like how he talked to me. He gave so-and-so a raise and he didn't give me one, so I quit. No. That's only acceptable when it's you. But when you have somebody else that you're responsible for, because in a relationship you really are responsible for each other, then you can't make decisions like that. You can't do certain things like that. You can't do that. So that's kind of what I wanted to spend some time with you all. Just like the prodigal son, he wanted something that he was not ready for, and it crushed him. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're going to be crushed by the very thing or the very person that God sends to bless us. And we also don't want to be the one who's doing the crushing. of that very thing or very person who God has sent to bless us. All right, so just spend a little time reflecting on that. Ask yourselves, am I ready consistently? Because some of you, as soon as you finish this video, you're going to go clean up that house. But you need to clean it up next week too, and the week after that, and keep it like that. Okay? So just be ready. Be ready. Be considerate. Be considerate of other people, because it's very hard being in a relationship with a selfish person. Selfish people don't need to be in a relationship. If you know that it has to be your way and that you're going to try to force your way on somebody else, you really do need to be by yourself. And I say that from the receiving end of selfish people. You need to be alone. All right. But thank you all so very much for watching. God bless you and have a great week. And I will see you next video. Bye-bye.